Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are meeting us from. Thank you for joining us again for another installment of our four-part series, Unraveled. And basically, we're just going to peel back and unpack some of these buzzwords floating around in the healing community, some of the IG words floating around that people have just either weaponized or just completely misrepresented. And we're just going to kind of explore the mind and body practices that support healing, like actual continuous healing. And this is brought to you by the Loveland Foundation.
Hi, everyone. I'm LaToya. I'm so glad to be back with you. And as Aseanté said, we are deepening into what it looks like to be whole, and specifically from the lens of Black women. We face something very specific and unique to us, and it's important that we name it, we explore it, and we journey back to our wholeness. Let's really be honest about these hot topics and these buzzwords. They can garner a lot of confusion within us, and also everyone's opinion and perspective is very different. And I want us to see ourselves, be ourselves, and know that our healing and our wholeness is unique to us. And it should be seen through the lens of us and expressed by us. For us, by us. And so today what were you saying?
I said, that's for us, by us. It's timeless.
It's timeless. It's so timeless. Yeah. So today we are focusing on unraveling shame. Somatic pause. Yeah. Shame. Okay. Let's get into it.
Not nervous at all. Not nervous at all.
All right. So shame is a complex human emotion that involves a sense of personal embarrassment sometimes, a little bit of humiliation, some disgrace, sometimes disgust. All of these things kind of swirl around within shame. And it's usually triggered when a person believes that their sense of expression has been violated by social norms and or moral norms. And we're going to really deepen into what that means for Black women specifically a little bit later. But either way, it's our actions that are considered to be judged. And shame is something that can be very distressing to us. I know that how I carry shame is very specific, and it shows up in my body in interesting ways. And we'll deepen into what that means a little bit later. But feelings of shame is accompanied with something that I want us to name right here and right now. And that's our sense of worth. We can feel inadequate. We can withdraw and hide who we truly are. So that sense of authenticity can be compromised when we deal with chronic shame. Aseanté, what do you think? Do you recognize any of that? Does that resonate with you?
All I have is ouch. So it's interesting you should say that. For the longest, like I remember being really young, like 4 or 5 years old, and something happening and like my face feeling hot and feeling really embarrassed and not being able to make it go away, but you don't have language for that. So it really is like your body knows that it's feeling shame before you have words for the shame. But then the problem is if there's no one to give you language for it, it then becomes normalized. And so whatever the topic is or the thing that you felt the shame around, it becomes, well, that I can't do that, or I don't want to do that, or let me not put myself in that space anymore. So I won't feel that thing. And with something very specific where that, that heat on my face came from, I realized I didn't try to do that thing until I was like an adult, because it's always the thing coming in the back of my mind, right? Around just not getting that hot face feeling. And so it did impact my self-worth. And there were other things that happened, like, young Black girl, that just both internally within, your family dynamics, and then just what the world tells us we are and aren't. And so that there's a lot of having to return to yourself once you take off what all the world has told you you are on. And a lot of that stuff creates a deficit in your self-worth. And so that's been something I had struggled with for a long time. And now I don't consider it a struggle. I feel like it's coming up again. I can do something with it. But it's still,
Yeah.
she still pops up. She still
Cool.
pops up. But I remember that it's my face just
Mm-hmm.
so hot and just like just wanting to,
Cover up. Yeah.
yeah.
I
So
that thank you. Thank you so much for naming that because I know how vulnerable that is to be able to speak that truth. So I appreciate you sharing that. We're going to get a little bit further into how the shame shows up. I
Mhm.
want to be very clear and specific so that maybe if it makes sense or if it like, oh, that makes sense to me, or yeah, that sounds familiar, you'll have some awareness. You'll be able to assign what shame is looking like. Um, Today, we're just going to explore three specific aspects of shame. So there's
Okay.
internalized shame. So that
Oh,
shame is turning inward. Anyone who may have experienced abuse, be it through the childhood or a domestic partnership, can be harboring and holding unworthiness, but also shame and fear around the abuse that they experienced. And
mhm.
so when we internalize the shame, it is this turning inwards and looking at all of the ways we did things wrong, even if
Mhm.
that is not true. It's just a perception.
Right.
One of the other aspects of shame is harmful shame or toxic shame. I prefer to say harmful shame because I am so exhausted with the word toxic, but they call it toxic shame.
It's like some people call it toxic, we're transferring it to harmful. That
Harm.
that sounds okay, I'm not gonna lie, that sounds scary. Like harmful. I'm like, shame is already bad. How do you make it harmful?
Let's get into it because of how it's causing you harm, right? We want to cause the least amount of harm to ourselves. So toxic shame shares similarities to internalized shame, and that it revolves around this belief that you are inherently flawed. There's something wrong with you. You are the problem. And we'll tap into something very specific later, which is transient shame. Toxic shame or harmful shame becomes a part of your core identity. So there is, you apologize often, or you do something, you say, I'm sorry, sorry. There's a lot of apologizing for who you are. Your, your very beingness is a problem. That's harm. That's harm to yourself. And
Mhm.
honestly, it's harm to others because then they don't get to know who you are truly. But this is what anchors your core belief.
Mm.
And this is what creates the
Cycle?
space of, excuse me?
I said, is that a cycle? Like, so do you go from internalized shame to
Oh,
harmful shame
it's a
to
harmful shame. It's a cycle. It moves
the,
into, it goes beyond just like a, oh, okay, well, it's like chronic. That's right. It's more of like a
yeah.
chronic shame. So every single thing, your outlook on life is just,
Oh, it's
I'm
your glasses. You have like shame glasses. Like that's how you see everything.
shame, shame glasses. I like that. Shame,
Yeah. Oh goodness. Shame shades.
shame shades. You're going through the world wearing shame shades. And when you have that, it's this, what comes about usually is what we're going to explore next session, which is you try to present yourself as flawless, that there is nothing wrong, and you conceal the internalized shame or you conceal the emotional turmoil that you're really living with, and you
Mhm.
present or posture
Mhm.
as flawless.
Mhm.
So that's also toxic and harmful because, again, it's this compromising authenticity. There's this not space for you to be who you truly are. Maybe that lands, maybe it doesn't. Maybe
Where else would it show? Where else would shame show up outside of making yourself smaller? Like, do you see people overcompensating when they feel shame?
absolutely. That is you're always going to give us the, I gotta tell you, okay, this one.
Questions, not for me, before a friend.
Is
If
a
people
gift. I
feel
mean, a
small, they
gift.
overcompensate.
Okay. Yes. So there is a sense of overcompensation when you are carrying shame because you don't want to be judged. You don't want to be harshly judged. You don't
Mhm.
want to be seen as, you don't want others to see you how you see yourself, if that makes sense.
It
It's,
does.
I'm this broken thing, and your perception, right? Your perception, your shame glasses, I'm this broken thing. I don't need anybody else to see that because then they can maybe break me down or shatter me to even smaller pieces. Now we see why toxic shame, in my opinion, is harmful shame. It's shame that is creating a sense of true depreciation and value and vitality of the self.
Mm. It's the phrase, hurt people come
Hurt
up like all the
people.
time. But I'm now thinking, based on how you've identified harmful shame, shamed people shame people.
Shamed people shame people. So those, okay, personal story.
Okay.
I'm pretty straightforward and to the point, and I like to be as loving and as kind as I possibly can to people.
Mm-hmm.
What bothers me and disturbs me is when I see people who are carrying their shame or carrying their hurt, and what they do is shame other people for jest or for jokes.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to see me undone, if you want to see the justice call that sings in my blood come to the fore, is to me bear witness to someone shaming someone because they are ashamed of themselves. And it usually comes through as a joker or someone who says things are very inappropriate or hurtful to other people, but it's just a projection. You know how we say the people are projecting, people project shame as well.
Yeah. And then oh gosh, okay. So a shamed person will shame someone, and then that person who's being shamed then internalizes the shame and then possibly repeats.
And so
and on and on and on and on and on.
All of these things are cycles. All of these things, if not honored and stopped, reframed, deconstructed, they will just create this insidious world of harm for ourselves and for others.
I'm definitely having I probably need to call somebody and apologize moment. Of thinking about my own moments like where I felt shame in a space and then where I lashed out. Because I was like, I don't want to, and okay, we get honest here. It wasn't just a matter of like, okay, I felt shame. And so I wanted to put it on someone else so it would be no longer me feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of more of a like, well, I feel it so other people have to as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like misery loves company, but shame loves company too. And if I'm fully honest with myself, it wasn't as much about like, you made me feel shame, so let me retaliate. It was more of a like, if I'm going to be here, other people have to feel
everybody going to be here.
Right. It was right. Because then in a weird way, then I felt safe. I was like, well, if you feel it too, then others are feeling it. So then I'm not the only one. And that's real jacked up. And it's the truth. So
it's the truth. So thank you for naming your truth. And I really want to say, as a Black woman, I really want us to pause there, because I know many Black women, myself included, we can be very much, if I'm everybody.
If mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.
Everybody getting it, right? And this is where we have space for expansion and growth, this self-reflection. If we're going to internalize, let's reflect and see where there's space for us to grow and develop and honor our humanness, but also lean deeply into our divinity, which we're going to get into a little bit later.
I appreciate this because with my background, like I understand working with shame and understand these pieces of it, but I really appreciate how you change the language for me to look at it. Yeah, I appreciate how you just in changing those few words help put it more in a cyclical perspective. Like it gave me like more of a cyclical visual instead of this listicle that people like to, like a diagnostic, sterile.
It's a diagnostic.
Yeah, and I was like, no, it's this.
That's my approach. That's how I ensure that when we are on this wholeness journey, specifically as Black women, there's this pathologizing of everything. Yeah. And we know what that is about. Not today, I'm not doing that today, but what I want us to ensure that this is about us and how we experience and learn and grow. And it's different, it's specific to us, okay? And that's what's important for me. So I'm glad that you receive and you see things from a lens that lands with you and maybe that we can share with others.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Okay. Having a moment.
Okay.
Now I'm mad. Now I'm mad because what happens, like this is changing it up for me. Your language is changing it up for me because I'm going to go back to that situation, like where I felt the shame from someone. And then I was like, okay, well, everyone's about to feel this. It came because I was constantly being targeted by this person. And only me in the room. I was the only Black person in leadership in the room. And so there was a constant like picking at me. And so now I'm even shifting the responsibility I'm going to take around the lashing out because there was this like intentional coming for me. And so they just caught me on a day where I didn't have my Black woman armor on. And it just, I was already vulnerable and it just, they hit the right part, right? They hit right below the armor, like right between those two pieces. And it just was too much for me. And so then I lash back out. And so I'm curious. And I know people don't like to do like, this is your fault. This is your fault. Like everyone has a role to play in it. But even in that moment, like as I'm thinking back through it again, I took full responsibility of that situation when I explained the story a moment ago versus now I'm thinking back through it. I was like, no, that person was exercising harmful shame towards me. And it wasn't okay for me to retaliate, but I need to acknowledge that something was being, like I was being provoked.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to respond.
Here we go. Which was, I'm planning to expand on harmful and toxic shame, especially within our community.
So you'll see, like we don't go into these topics ahead of time because so he's schooling me in real time right now.
You expanded that, which is what I wanted to lean into. Our upbringing. Remember, we talked about our cultural, societal norms, moral norms, but also how we were brought up. There is a such thing as healthy shame, and I like to explore it as transient shame. And it's just this brief passing of a sensation that arises when you make a mistake or an error happens, like, oh, like a little something. And it happens usually when we are in social settings. And it moves quickly. So it just evaporates really quickly. You feel it, it rises up, and then it disperses. It doesn't stay or hold within you, and it doesn't create this lasting impact to your life. That is transient shame. I'm going to give you a story. I'm going to set it up for you in just a moment. Now, think about transient or healthy shame, and think about harmful or toxic shame. In your household, I'll use myself, okay? How we were brought up, how we learned how to make decisions and how to do things. If I was in the kitchen, exploring in the kitchen, the stove, for example. All right, I'm going to tell you a real story. If I was in the kitchen exploring, I was about to make up something, but I'm going to tell you all the truth. So if I was in the kitchen exploring like the utensils, specifically knives, I was just they were so interesting to me. Don't worry, I'm fine. But they were so fascinating to me.
No judgment.
And I remember there was this time where I thought I had a fixation with knives for a long time. You know the Swiss Army knives? I can't even. I was like into those. I don't even know how I got my hand on one, but I did. You know how you have the drawer in the kitchen that's got all the things in it?
Yes, the forever jump.
Yeah. So there was a Swiss Army knife in there, and I was just messing around and playing with it. And I remember my mother coming in and screaming, "What are you doing? Are you crazy? Do you want to like," and it startled me. I don't know how old I was. I must have been maybe around 8 or 9. I don't know, maybe something like that. But I was just curious. And obviously she was afraid that I was going to harm myself, right? So in her panic, she panicked and I freaked out. "Are you crazy? Don't be stupid." And like the language that lands.
Oh, yeah.
This is a shaming that's happening. Hold yourself if you need to hold yourself if you're a mother. Hold yourself if you need to hold yourself if you're a child or a daughter. I'm just bringing it to the fore, right? This is a shaming that's happening. And what it did for me was I for a long time, I kept myself from my interest in sharp objects, if that makes sense. I'm like, well, I can't. Let me put that knife down.
The 4-year-old with the hot face. And so I didn't do it again.
Let me not do that.
Yeah.
So that is harmful shame, not harmful. That's a very small, there are different versions that go into more abuse, right? Depending on the household that you were brought up in. And that is a version of, okay, the parent is not regulated. Therefore, the parent is, okay, very. Now, a transient or healthy shame is the parent seeing that and being like, firmly saying, LaToya, stop what you're doing. Look at that. And taking a moment to explain, you should not be doing this because you can hurt yourself. Not that you're stupid, not that you're crazy, we don't
Not that
do
there's anything wrong with your curiosity, but the way that you're expressing
the way that it's being
is
expressed
dangerous to you.
Right, it's dangerous. So these are some of the lenses through which we can see harm when we're children. Some of the lenses we can see harm as transient or as harmful when we're in the workplace. Because Aseanté, when you said the Black woman armor,
yeah,
that's our next season, y'all, because we can do this all day.
That's next. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I understand what you're saying about the transient shame. I'm struggling with the word shame still being in it because shame has such a negative connotation to it.
It's got a negative connotation. However, it's a natural emotional response. It's evolved. It's evolutionary.
It doesn't. We've been so again unraveling because you're told shame always comes from something, really bad and traumatic, and it's a horrible thing to have, and you should always work to not have it versus it being a natural indication. Like, so it's meant to pass through, not meant to pass through.
And it's meant to create an opportunity to respond or take action when we need to as an evolutionary emotion. If there was something that happened, I wasn't there. So there's a theory. But in the mindset, if you are moving through the space or moving through the world and there was something happening that would cause you danger or cause you harm, there is this sense of like, oh, I should have been able to respond quickly to this. Now, this doesn't mean that you are a terrible person who doesn't make the right decision. It just means, oh, there is a lag. So just a little shaming of, hey, look here. This is what you need to do.
So it's more so correction.
Correction.
So being, and I think that's a piece of it too, being aware of the language in this westernized culture, how they label certain words, but us being able to differentiate, right? Like, yes, it's all under the umbrella of shame. Transient shame is really more of like the correction and the awareness. So you know not to do a thing anymore. Yes, it still has the word shame connected to it. It is not the negative connotation that we created around shame. The negative connotation we created around shame sits with the internalized and the harmful
toxic shame. So
that's helpful.
I want us to, this is for me, it's really important for us to extract and really deconstruct words and comprehend. So shame is an emotion. It's not a word. It's an emotion, right? We give it a word. It's a name, right? But it's an emotion. Right. So
it's a body reaction.
It's a reaction. It's a response. So deepen into relationship with your emotions. When you can deepen into relationship with your emotions, you have a better sense of regulating them and moving through them and not allowing them to have you all over the place without you being able to stay in a space of deep center, deep awareness. And that is what we want to honor. We don't really need to focus on the name shame or the word shame. We comprehend what the emotion is. We comprehend what it's looked like played out in our relationships and with the relationship, including the self, right? And deepen into relationships so that we can conquer, if you will, or overcome.
So if we're putting, actually, my type A brain, I'm like, the word shame is throwing me off. It's throwing me off. But if we're sitting with it as an emotion, then talk to me about the difference between the shame emotion and a guilt emotion.
We're going to get to it.
Okay.
We're going to get to it. So that means let's keep going. All right. So we named some of the specifics of shame. I isolated 3.
Okay.
It can be more expansive, but we just isolated 3 so that we can have an understanding. Let's talk about some of the characteristics. One of the things that you just named is negative about self-evaluation. So the negative perception of it. So again, this is in alignment with this sense of being flawed and unworthy and deficient. We understand that negative self-evaluation is harmful, and it is the baseline of this seeing the self as not worthy. let's get into the space of self-evaluation of a space for correction, right? This is where the transient space come in. So you look at the negative self-talk or the positive self-talk. You can look at it from different perspectives.
Okay.
We've already discussed that it impacts or it comes around through our cultural norms and our social norms. And if we feel like we've failed in some way and we haven't met the standards or the expectations that have been given to us by society, our family, and our peers, shame can start to move around. And as Black women, y'all, come on now. We're gonna keep going because I have something for us. I have something for us.
There are a lot of stories. Like
there's so many stories, but there's actually practices. We have practices to reverse all of this and to also stop it in its track. Okay. So one of the things that we need to name about shame is that it's something that can be harbored and held in a very isolating or private way. So we don't really want to express the things, or we conceal our truths, even to our therapists or even to the people who are supporting us, because we don't want to be embarrassed. Our idea of shortcomings, we're going to get deeper into this when we talk about perfectionism, y'all. Oh, oops. Anyway.
Next time. Because right now I'm feeling all the
things.
Feeling heat as you're naming like all the examples around.
Because it's important to name. You got to see it. If you don't see it, if you don't sit with it, then you can't work with it, and it will continue to control and rule you outside of your true self and your authenticity.
It's like again, we're full transparency. I wonder how many times you've said that in a session, but I feel like I'm having some shame around having shame, because I know it's not like, I'm a licensed therapist, so I'm aware like how these things show up. And I'm still like, I'm having shame around the fact that I'm still struggling with shame in some areas.
Yeah. And there are going to be practices very soon that we can deepen into that will support us in freeing ourselves and liberating ourselves from harboring sense of shame about shame.
Yeah. Like it's, oof.
Yeah. So we've named how it can show up in the body. So our physical responses, and we'll also name the the psychological responses or symptoms of shame. So that blushing or the redness in the face, or that heat in the face, this lowering gaze or looking away. That's my thing, very much so. Yeah, I remember we've had beautiful conversations. Remember we were talking that time and you said, okay, that I heard the lioness. Now I hear a baby, like the little lion cub talking, this small and the shrinking of the self. And for me, that it's like a true like lowering of my gaze when I'm experiencing shame. That's something that comes through for me. That's a physical manifestation of that. Crying, not being able to use your voice or stuttering is something that shows up. Racing heart, which you can see that amongst many different things. But some of the psychological symptoms that can pair with shame, anxiety, which we've named and explored, depression, and then the impacts of that is just carrying around low self-esteem. And we're going to deepen a little bit further into that body responses in a moment, but let's get to guilt versus shame.
It's like, wait, am I feeling shame for shame, or am I feeling guilty because of the shame?
Oh, here we go. I'm going to make it real plain. We're going to put a nice little ribbon, a bow on this.
Let me know which unhealthy coping mechanism I'm exhibiting right now.
We're going to put a really pretty ribbon on this. And by that, we're going to just put it together. Shame versus guilt. Okay. Shame absolutely has overlapping emotions. We've talked about that already. But here's the thing that we want to know and explore about guilt. Guilt is focused on an action or a behavior that involves feelings of remorse. Again, like, oh, I did something that maybe I shouldn't have done that. But you have a desire to want to fix it or solve it or make an end. You want to take action with that, right? Shame is about the self as a whole being. And it often leads to this pervasive sense of like, I'm unworthy. So here it is. Guilt is the feeling of doing something wrong. Shame is the feeling of being something wrong. Land,
You
pause,
should repeat that. You need to
breathe.
repeat that one. Repeat that one before we breathe, because
Okay.
run that one back.
Guilt is the feeling of doing something wrong. You've done something wrong, right? Shame is the feeling that you are a being that is wrong. You are being something wrong.
Mm.
As a Black woman, really let that land. Take that somatic pause, because let's pause. Take a deep inhale and then an exhale out of the mouth. Our beingness has been our beingness. I'm here to tell you that you are whole, just as you are. You are a divine being and you are worthy. And for the next segment, we're going to get a little bit further into what that looks like. Yeah. Land. Grab your notebook, your journal, something to write with. You've probably already been taking notes, but this time I really want you to grab that so that you can be prepared. Okay. We are moving into the next segment, which is what is the block? Shame's impact on our ability to experience pleasure, joy, experience ourselves as whole.
Mm-hmm.
I want to take this moment to really reiterate something. This idea that Black women, we are inherently bad, that there is something inherently wrong with us, it's a lie from the pits of hell. Okay, need to name that. And it is something that is, I like to call it, it's a scam. They have been scamming you, sis. Don't let them scam you anymore. You are worthy as you are. How you show up is beautiful. Who you are is truly the embodiment of the divine.
Mm-hmm.
See me, feel me, hear me. You are whole.
That needed to be said.
It had to be said. It had to be said. We unintentionally internalize these sentiments. And it's lots of different things, right? These beauty standards that are not our own. Mm-hmm. We carry this compromised sense of self. Our identity, who we are, is been placed upon us, right? Mm-hmm. We didn't ask for this. We were born into this society that has us out here shape-shifting and changing who we are truly and inherently. Liberate yourself, free yourself, because that is a block on your ability and the access that you have to your pleasure, your joy, your wholeness. Some of the things that go unexpressed and some of the ways that we articulate, we speak, how we show up, it can be ridiculed, aggressive, angry, all those ridiculous tropes. Let me tell you something. Or let me ask you something. How can we experience true joy when we haven't even healed our sense of self as it relates to carrying these particular constructs that have been instilled into us by society? How can we even truly experience pleasure and joy that is for us?
Well, a lot of us don't know what the block is, right?
We don't know what the blocks are.
What's blocking us. Like, we don't know when we're feeling blocked. And some people do, and then they don't know what to do with it. But I think a lot of it starts with not even knowing where it lives in your body.
They talk themselves out of it. Mm-hmm. We talk ourselves out of it. No, I'm just overthinking. It's a whole bunch of, listen to your innate wisdom is telling you the truth, right? Is speaking the truth. Okay. So when we carry around these false stories of who we are, what it does is leads us to disowning ourselves. Internalization of our false story is creating stress, It's tainting our lens. That's when we really buckle down on those shame shades.
Mm.
And as his name, we create a body armor, the Black woman's armor. Y'all,
Mm.
what does it look like? So they call this armor, they have the fancy names for it. It's called a somatic shape. And this is how we navigate life. It's just the practices and the habits that we have to navigate this sometimes very volatile world that we're living in. And it creates these cycles of shame that we've talked about. And what we need to do is reprogram that. And we're going to get into what that looks like. How can we reprogram that?
I'm here for the reprogramming.
Okay, great. As we already know, that shame lives in the body and it is ever changing. And because we've been programmed to mistrust ourselves and dislike what's in flux. So the specific energy and the essence of a woman is in flux. It's cyclical, it's moving, it's transient. It's like the wind. Think of your cycle. Think of your energy, your mood, and how you feel when you wake up in the day and how you feel as you lay on your bed. That has been shamed. Like, that's a problem. So all of these external processes that have us thinking that who we are as women naturally, it's interrupted our ability to be with ourselves. And what ends up happening is that we self-criticize.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get into what the practices are. Now, there are some things to note when you are dealing with shame and how it shows up in the body. The physical symptoms can look like pain. It can look like tightness, muscle tension, very similar to when we're experiencing anxiety, because it's an aversion. It's like it's repelling the true self. So of course, the body's going to respond to that. And this is stored in the body in really specific ways. It's stored in the cellular memory. Obviously, ancestral trauma has an impact as well. This energetic imprint really affects how we move through the world and carry ourselves. Our posture can be affected as well, this turning into the self, but also
like I see this image of like, just as more shameful things get put upon you, like you're adding another coat, like another layer and another layer and another layer.
Mm-hmm. So that's one version of the poor posture. But then the other version of the poor posture, which we've named earlier, is that you can take on this defensive posture, this aggressive posture. So then it's like the chest is out. Again, shame people. So that depends on the person's unique shame story, but it can look like how you're posturing in any way, but it's also how you're expressing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
We must name that digestive issues also take a shape as well when we're carrying shame, because if you are internalizing who you are truly, if you are swallowing your truth, for example, if you're in knots about who you are, it's going to impact your gut. Your gut is your first brain, y'all. I mean, I know that's up for debate, but I won't debate that. Digestive issues that we carry is often because of the emotional impact that we're moving through in our lives. So it can show up as digestive challenges. So can I ask you, Aseanté, where does shame activate in your body? You said that you have the heating of the face.
Heating of the face, digestive.
Yeah.
Digestive is a big one for me. Posture shows it shows up. Both show up. So when I am in the presence of people, there's definitely a doubling down of like the chest out and the naming the thing. When I'm by myself, there is a lot of like well, not a lot, but when shame is coming up, when I'm processing it, when I'm managing it, I notice I go like almost into like the fetal position. Like there is a lot of like, I just don't want the world. I just no thank you to the entire world. Right now, I just want to be as small as possible. And so those two are probably the biggest are the biggest for me. The digestive one, it took me a while to realize that that's what was connected to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the generational and intergenerational shame that comes up in our families, like showing up in the reproductive system,
Yes.
more so in the gut. And so, yeah, mine are very internal, because also as Black women, we have been in the past required to swallow our shame. So it makes sense
Our
that
shame.
we have
Yeah.
internal
Right.
issues because of shame.
And you named it just now, reproductive challenges.
Mm-hmm.
That bestow the reproductive hormones, they fluctuate, excuse me, and based on our energetic and psychological responses to our environment, to our upbringing, and all of the things that you just named, that will have an impact on our body. Think
Mm-hmm.
about your body as a woman. Think about how through religion, through society, through all sorts of things, our natural processes, our menses is shamed. Shamed. Okay. This is a big, big topic. And I'm bringing this up because I want you to have a deeper awareness of it so that you can start to make decisions for yourself and for your wholeness and for your well-being. Pleasure practices, that's what we're going to explore. So it's this reframing of shame, which we've been doing, and reimagining pleasure. Okay, we already know shame blocks our ability to feel worthy, but it also affects how we experience pleasure.
We have
What
shame
does
in
pleasure
feeling
teach us?
pleasure. So it's like you are reimagining pleasure. Like people feel shame around having pleasure at all.
That's why we're
So
going to reimagine it. We're going to reimagine pleasure. Take a moment. If you haven't grabbed your book or your notes, you can do it later. You can do it now. But when you think of pleasure in one or two or three words, what do you think of, or what comes up for you? You don't have to name it. You can write it down, but what comes up for you?
hmm. Hmm. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. You got to reimagine pleasure
See what
because you
you
got
did.
to be with it.
I see what you did there. I see what you did there. So
Yeah.
the first thing that came to mind
Mm-hmm.
when you said, like, when you're like, when you think of pleasure, what comes up for you? I was like, oh, my whole body gets really warm. I'm like, wait, when I feel shame, I was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
it's the same thing that I'm saying is shame, depending on the circumstance, is pleasure in a different
It's
circumstance.
ah,
Because
here we are.
there's a physical reaction. Like I'm having
Yeah.
a warmth when it's
Mm.
like, oh, like when something you eat something really good, or
Yes.
like you're looking at people around you and you're just like, I just feel warm. You're like, that warmth just turns to like, furnace heat when I feel shame, but it's still an elevated temperature in my body.
Yeah.
It just has to get like wielded a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I see what
Enjoyment.
you did. I see what you did there. I see what you
Yeah,
did.
enjoyment and bringing about a space where you can see the things that interest you, the things that you want to do, the things that you want to say, how you want to express. There is joy there. Pleasure is joy.
Mm-hmm.
Pleasure is joy, y'all. Pleasure is not anything other than being able to experience joy.
Mm-hmm.
And shame compromises joy. One of the ways to reclaim or reimagine pleasure is to hold yourself as sacred and own your story, own who you are. We're going to take on, did you have something?
Yes, because I hear what you're saying and I agree with you. And it's the what if your story is riddled with shame that came outside of you? How do
Right.
you own
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
I would think you wouldn't want that.
So shame that came outside of you is not your story.
Say it again. Say it.
Shame that came from outside of you is not your story.
It's
Holding
not my
yourself as a
story. It's just your
sacred,
experience.
it's just your experience. You're holding yourself as a
Right.
sacred being, right? That's the experience. Who are you? You, me, LaToya, Aseanté. Who am I? Okay. This sacred being. This is when we start to deepen into the lens of the divine feminine, which is it's a lot of my work. And so I'm going to say something called feminine shame. Free yourself from feminine and what that's supposed to look like for now. Just
Okay.
trust yourself and trust that I'm going to guide you. Feminine shame, so being with divine feminine energy. Feminine shame through the lens of a society that has seen Black women as problematic, as the martyrs, as the one who labors and does all the things. So Black women tend to hold a resistance, sometimes aversion, sometimes resentment, and also fear towards anything that's soft, transient, cyclical, something that's fluid and flux, as I named earlier, anything intuitive and emotional and truth. But that's because of society has told it's a problem how we show up authentically. And so when we honor our softness, our fluidity, we can often talk ourselves out of it because of these false tropes that have been moving through the world. Angry, bitter, all these things that have nothing to do with who we are. And so there is this unconscious leaning into that because we were on defense. And I get it. What does it look like as a sacred being who owns her story and who leans into her version or your version or the woman's version of softness, not what social media says softness is, okay? Not what anyone else says nurturing or intuitive energy is. What is that for you? Owning your truth. That is for you to unpack and to be with. All of this, as we have named at the beginning, is a practice. It is a lifestyle. There is no one and done. You don't eat a good meal and be like, all right, y'all, forever. It's done. Forever. No, this is the work. This is the work. So
I'm still sitting with the shameful things that have happened to you are not your story. They are your experience.
Yeah.
But that's not who you are. It's something you experienced.
You experienced it, so you don't have to internalize.
And it wasn't because you weren't worthy or good. It was
it was just a
traumatic experience. It was a bad
traumatic. It was a circumstantial response.
Yeah, it was not.
It was something that happened, and
like before you can. No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm thinking like before you can start to own your story, you have to take off all the stuff that isn't your story, and I think a lot of people.
So I want to
think of I just keep seeing like a piece of fruit that like has such a hard shell, and before you can get to that like beautiful soft center, you got to take off the hard shell. And the first part of taking off the hard shell is realizing these experiences are not who you are, not because of who you are.
Land there, because what ends up happening, let's land right there. So it's because those are the experiences. It's not who you are. Here's what happens when we start wanting to take off things, right? Or address all of the things. It's distracting us from the actual work. The work isn't acknowledging it and having the awareness of it is where you start. Okay, perfect. I have the awareness that I am not those things. Those were the experiences. Okay. Yes, my story seems to be riddled with so many things that I have been attached to and have been carrying, but let the mind, the body, the spirit do its thing. We don't have to intellectualize. We're talking about through the lens of Black women. We're magic. Believe me, I promise you, we are. And so with that, no, we are. And with that, you have outlets for that. That's where your talk therapy comes into place and you can start talking about those things. But we want to, for ourselves, start to invite in practices and invite in experiences that start to counter that. Let that happen naturally.
So you're saying be aware of it, but don't ruminate.
Don't ruminate.
And then have an outlet, like almost like I'm visual. So now I'm seeing like, those like when you go to those fancy like birthday parties or bridal showers or baby showers, and they have like the clear water thing, and you like have the little spigot and you like open it up, and then all this, so have a space where those thoughts are coming up that you can like open the spigot and it runs out. Like don't let it ruminate and sit in there, because
don't let it sit.
In it is the distraction. Okay, so you're not saying like don't worry about it, but you're like don't let that be your focus. Let it be the awareness and the trigger, but don't let it be your focus.
Because when you started focusing on that, it's keeping you from doing your actual work. That's
actually begets more shame because you're
it
like,
begets more shame. And that is the work of the enemy, distraction. Not wanting, what do I say? Reimagine pleasure. I want you to be experiencing pleasure. I want you to release the shame, experience the pleasure. So you actually have to bring about the pleasure. And you do that by opening yourself slowly but surely to what your capacity to sustain pleasure is. So I'm not here to tell you, all right, get it, go. No. What is your capacity?
Throw me in the deep end and making me feel
I'm not going to throw you in the deep end. I mean, if we were in immersive, I would. However, we're not. We're here present. Let's get to it. So feminine shame impacts everyone, and that I got to name that. Doesn't matter what your gender is. It doesn't matter what physical anatomy you have. Feminine or divine feminine shame is problematic. It's abstract in that it is an energy, right? And it refers to, in my perception of this, is what refers to anything that is natural in our nature, because people shame our nature. People's nature is shamed all of the time. So that's where I lean into this sense of the feminine essence. And that's where feminine shame is a problem, not just for women, it's a problem for men as well, because men don't get to honor and tap into their feminine energy. Landing, this is not what this is about today, but I had to say it.
A little special nugget we can take away in addition.
More questions for you. So as we move into the rituals for clearing shame, have you ever felt there was something fundamentally wrong with you just for existing? Okay. If it's a yes or a no, okay. Do you perpetually try to fix yourself? Yes or no? Can you try to fix yourself because you're not enough on some level? Yes or no? Does your self-care slowly turn into self-punishment or self-fixing or a project?
So does the self-care then become a burden? It's not doing what it's meant to do anymore. Okay. And yes, that's I'm 3 for 3.
And do you feel sometimes disconnected to yourself, the human, and yourself, the divine being? And are you willing to allow them to converge?
Thank you for that. I got 100 on my shame quiz. Thanks.
Yay!
Yes, yes for all of them. For feminine shame.
Hooray! Now we know. It's exciting. So we have to start being really excited about knowing ourselves better.
Yes. No, I'm actually I would have never. I appreciate the questions because I would have never. I wouldn't have framed them like that for it to be about feminine shame. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a thing. Okay.
It is a thing. So some of the explorations that you can do on your own and in your own time is awakening self-expression, being willing to tap into some of the things that bring you joy and engage with expressive writing, perhaps. Think of yourself as this young little girl or teenager who just didn't have the weight of the world. But I will name, if that wasn't your experience, I respect you. I see you. This is where we can tap into the imagination. We're reimagining, right? So think of yourself as this young girl who is expressive and has all these interesting stories or fantasies about things that you find interesting. So bringing in something like expressive writing is a beautiful practice to adopt. That's when you grab your journal and just let your imagination go. Maybe there's an imagination or a vision around something in the future or something that you haven't honored in the past. Don't worry. It's not going to be judged, graded. This is not a dissertation that you need to defend. Don't worry. It's an opportunity to be expressive. But another thing that you can do, because some of us don't like writing. I get it. I love to write, but I respect it. Press record. We all have these little devices. And I think all of them have a recording device on the app. Press record and let yourself speak freely. And that freely, it doesn't need to be a performance. However, if you want to tap into the theatrical self, do that. But allow yourself to say all the things you didn't say in the meeting. or allow yourself to say all the things that you possibly ruminate around and internalize in a shower around a conversation that you had. So that's one way of exploring it, but also enjoying and saying some things that are funny, or just expressing yourself truly and authentically. Another thing to do to awaken self-expression is to turn on your favorite tune and give yourself a minimum of 5 minutes of free dancing. Y'all, I'm telling you, I do this all of the time. It is so good. It's one of the best prescriptions that I give to my clients. Just free dance. And if you feel awkward, that's okay. If you feel shame, that's okay. Keep going, keep practicing it. And then once you're done, what you do is allow yourself to pause and feel your body after you've written, feel your body after you've spoken and used your voice, and feel your body after you've moved. You can do all of those in combination, or you can choose which one that you like. It's really giving main character energy. I think that's what the kids say these days. It's giving that. Y'all, I said it's giving main character energy. Be your own main character. Expression.
It's your story. So I feel like you should be. Because too often we are not the main character in our own story. Or at least we're not the hero. If we are the main character, we're the villain.
We're the villain.
This allows us to. That's a question. In year one, do you feel like you're a main character in your own story? And do you feel like you're the villain? And is that where the shame is coming up? You are the hero in your story.
Yeah, be the hero.
Not the savior, not the martyr, because we're not getting into that, but the hero in your story.
The hero. Y'all, be the hero. All right. And then we have what I like to call, and I've coined, the sensual sadhana. Sadhana is Sanskrit. I am a yoga teacher. So sadhana is Sanskrit, and it simply means spiritual practice, your spiritual practice. Sensual. What comes up when you think about or feel into sensual? Everybody has their own identities around what that means. For the sake of this exploration, sensual just means being able to be alive and present with yourself in each moment, to be alive with the senses, to allow yourself to experience the fullness of each moment. A sensual sadhana is a daily devotional practice of sensual pleasure, and it's dedicated and devoted to self-love. And devoting yourself to sensuality opens up this beautiful portal of creativity and magnetism. Be magnetic. I mean, we're already magnetic.
That part.
Turn up the tune to the magnetic. I mean, y'all, because that's why. Okay. Lots of things unfold when our magnetism is on 100. Like it moves the room. You know, it moves the room.
It's a vibe.
It's the vibe. So deepening into that as a practice is beautiful. I'll give you some practices that you can do. So obviously we've already explored honoring our emotions, but also with the honoring and allowing the emotions to come online, we offer ourselves compassion. Really resting in the heart. That's so important. An Abhyanga massage. I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner. So Abhyanga is just basically giving yourself a nice, loving, touching massage with oil. So you would moisturize your entire body using your favorite oil. Excuse me.
Okay.
What's the beautiful perk is to warm it up.
Making these notes.
Yeah. And you have a nice shower or bath, maybe even light a candle or burn some incense, turn down the lights, and you just give yourself a loving, sensual Abhyanga massage.
How do you spell that?
Abhyanga, Abhyanga.
Okay.
And
I've been following up these spa places. Do y'all do Abhyanga?
Do y'all do Abhyanga massage? Places you go to an Ayurvedic spa, they will do it. Some of the other aspects, which this is also Ayurvedic. However, all Ayurveda is an indigenous practice. And so you've heard and seen Abhyanga massages in cultures that we are familiar with. They just don't call it that. They call it something else. So This is all
Okay.
indigenous and ancient, y'all. So don't even worry about it. You can
Also that
invite in a sensual breast massage in the shower when you're soaping up yourself, just being able to be deepening into the space of the heart. And the breasts are very much so connected to our heart space. And there is this sense of shame that we carry with our body parts, our breast, our bums, our yonis or vaginas. Saying vagina is like, people have a problem with that. It's a vagina. Relax. It's okay.
It's fine.
Love it.
It's fine.
It's fine.
You came from one.
You came from one, y'all. Y'all.
You liked it at one point.
Y'all.
Help get you out here.
Okay. So allowing yourself to be with who you are bare naked. And these are, again, as I said, only your capacity to sustain this. These are just suggestions and offerings for you to explore. Standing in the mirror naked. Now that can be just from the shoulders up and just seeing your face and putting on your nice skincare regimen and just saying loving things to yourself. This is a sensual sadhana, being kind and loving to yourself. Maybe as you moisturize your hair, laughing, smiling, turning off the TikTok or the whatever playing in the background, maybe turning on some nice music.
Yeah.
And just giving, creating, turning this into a ritual, turning this into a devotional practice. This, y'all, is, as Black women, is absolutely very much so inherent to our practices. We just have to return to it. And we have to treat it as something that is worthy of our time. And we have to make time for it. Sensual selfies, not to send. I mean, do what you want. However,
they are for you. They are not meant to
but
be.
These are for you.
They're not required to be consumed. No, that's big, because like, do it, send it to yourself, like date yourself, court yourself. Like, it's a selfie for a reason. So get done up, do all the things. It's not meant to, it doesn't have to be consumed by another person. If someone else consumes it, that's just icing on the cake. Cool.
Right.
But the gift is you get to look at you. The main gift is you get to see, like, oh, that's me.
That's me. Me?
That's me.
Oh, I'm dope. Okay. So that is a really lovely practice to invite in. And having that
hold on.
as well, dancing as well. Record yourself dancing.
But I kind of want to sit with that for a second, because all of these are centered around pleasing ourselves.
Yeah.
It's not centered around how it can be of service to someone else in some way, right? Or be even consumed or witnessed by someone else. Like, it's not meant to necessarily be witnessed by another person. And as Black, we have always been consumed by others. Changing that. I was like, well, everyone else is consumed. Just consume yourself.
Consume yourself. And I mean, devour yourself fully and completely. Do that. Yes. Because what did I name at the beginning? Talking about shame. It's very private and isolating. Okay. Let this beautiful reimagining of pleasure be private and sacred. Not a secret, but allow it to be sacred. Because when you're carrying that, I'm telling y'all, the magnetism is going to magnetize.
Magnets bring things to you.
You heard. Okay. So wear that lovely sensual lingerie that's in the back of the drawer that you've been holding on for whoever or whatever or whenever. Let it be for you.
It's Tuesday. It's time.
Y'all, give yourself some zhuzh. Do this for yourself and allow it to be something that is, it's a sensual sadhana. It's a spiritual practice. Sensuality, your body is spiritual. It is divine. It is holy. It is lovely. It is perfect. And it's so important to honor that. And we honor it by allowing ourselves to see it and be with it. And then I'd love for you to explore any sort of practices that you can do this in community with other women. Aseanté, anything to add? Do you have a sensual sadhana practice?
I do, but it's private, like you told
I know
me.
that's right. Hey, baby, you do not have to say.
I consume me.
Well,
I do consume me. And I have recently realized it's time to change it up. And so I was doing certain things to like really take care of myself and reimagine pleasure. And I'm in a different season of my life now. And I was like, why aren't these things working anymore? I was like, oh, because I'm in a different season and it calls for something else. And so I'm kind of at the beginning of that phase again, now figuring out in this particular season, in this version of who I am, what does pleasure look like? What does consuming myself look like? What does celebrating myself look like? Because I am now different than what I was. And that worked for that season. But what's this one? Yeah. So I'm active in having a practice. I need a new one in this season. And so now I'm about to explore, what does that mean? And what does that look like? Like, what gets to stay? Like, what stays from previous season? What still works? What still serves me? What still fills me up? And what doesn't work in this season?
What doesn't work anymore in this season? So. Okay. We've landed on what is your pleasure practice and how do you honor your sensual sadhana and all of the things. Aseanté, you want to close us out?
I really like the sensual sadhana, and I really like the shifting of our story, how we know each other, or how we get to know ourselves. I think a few things that came up for me in today's session was like shame people. That was a really big like aha for me. And then consume yourself. Like consume yourself. Like we have literally been the consumption. We've been relegated to being consumed by so many people, even our own, even each other. Consume yourself.
Yeah.
And whatever that looks like. And for some people, that's like, it's not, and sensual also doesn't mean like you have to be in lingerie or you have to be this. It is an appreciation of and celebration of your body and what makes your body feel powerful. Because femininity is really powerful, right? It actually is extremely powerful. And so sitting in how do you consume yourself, love yourself, celebrate yourself. I think those two, that dichotomy, like those 2 points really did something for me. But I do want to say thank you for that, because I had a few aha moments. I have a few things in my notebook. Thank you all for joining us today. If you found this video helpful, please like it and share it with your friends or your foes. If it's somebody that's like, we only not friends because this is what you're struggling with, send it to them. Consider it as a Christmas gift, a Friendsgiving gift, a birthday, like send it to your people. Because this is stuff that it's real. It's real, and it needs to become normalized in conversation. So
absolutely,
send it to your folks.
Subscribe to the Loveland Foundation, where we provide accessible mental health resources for everyone on their journey. And please remember, you are not alone in this space. You are seen, you are heard, and reach out to us at any time, because we are excited to support you and hold the spaces for you. Absolutely. Let's embrace our essence together, y'all, and let's get out here and reimagine what it looks like to have a pleasure-filled life. Shamelessly. Pleasure-filled. I love it. Join us next time as we unravel the mistruths around perfectionism. Where's my fan? Usually have it.
And since we talked about shame today, it'll be so much easier to get into that. So we'll see you all next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.